Welcome to Graceguts&grit, the podcast about showing up, standing tall, and handling life's plot twists with just the right mix of grace, guts, and grit. No manuals, just real talk and survival strategies. So grab your coffee, your kombucha, whatever fuels you, and let's get into it, because showing up isn't the goal. Showing up boldly, unapologetically, and authentically, that's where the magic is. Today on Grace, Guts and Grit, we're not here to celebrate resilience. We're actually here to ask a harder question. Why is it demanded so unevenly? Resilience isn't just a personal virtue. It's often a requirement imposed by systems, cultures, internalized expectations. When resilience stops being an occasional response to crises and becomes a daily requirement for existing in your workplace, and then you're expected to bounce back from microaggressions, absorb extra work without complaint, and maintain perfect composure while you're being constantly overlooked. That's not character building. That's a system designed to extract everything you have until there's nothing left, until you're burnt out. Which leads us to today's topic, burnt offerings, what the system takes from you. Burnout isn't caused by neglecting your personal wellness routine. It's not because you skipped yoga or you forgot your affirmations. It's caused by a system that treats self-sacrifice as a prerequisite, as a requirement for belonging. McKinsey's research shows that women of color experience burnout up to 40% more than white men in comparable roles. Also, Harvard studies have linked immigrant status to chronic stress loads 2.5 times higher than for non-immigrant peers. Today, we'll unpack the signs of allostasis, chronic stress, and what happens when survival mode becomes your default. I'm Kemi, physician, Nigerian immigrant, burnout survivor, and your guide through the politics of showing up, speaking up, and staying whole. But let me be clear up front. I'm going to tell you about systems that failed me and choices I made that failed me. And pretending it's all one or the other wouldn't help anyone. We treat burnout like fatigue, but your body sounding the alarm. Chronic stress doesn't just wear you down, it rewires you. This is allostasis, your body's stress thermostat. Smart in short bursts, but destructive when it's always on. When stress is constant, you're navigating racism, sexism, chronically code switching, and managing microaggressions. Your body doesn't reset. It stays on high alert. That's hypervigilance. Scanning wounds, bracing for nonsense. And because every sentence is a performance to smooth your native rhythm into something safer and more acceptable, less other. You're like a deer stuck in the headlights. Researchers call it allostatic load. That's the biological wear and tear from prolonged survival mode. Blood pressure climbs, cortisol floods, sleep disappears. Your heart forgets how to rest. The science is solid here. Today, what we're debating is the cause. My burnout wasn't a crash. It was a slow fade of belief, of purpose, of joy. And each day started with deepening dread. Cynicism crept in. Fatigue became my baseline. And I owned this. I wasn't just a victim. I made choices. I said yes to everything, thinking I had to prove I was capable. Unpaid labor, extra committees, extra shifts, coming in on my days off. Doing a lot of glue work that holds teams together but leaves you invisible. But here's where it gets complicated. Some of those yeses were for my survival. Some were for my ambition, and some were born out of fear. And some, they were just stupid choices, I have to admit. I didn't track my wins. I thought the work and my dedication would speak for me. I swallowed vague feedback instead of probing it. I thought endurance would earn me respect. Instead, it earned me burnout. And eventually, burnout just stopped being a mood. It just became imperative that I did something about it. And let me be clear, I had the privilege to walk away. I had to step away from organized healthcare. Most people don't. And then I had to investigate how I got here and how never to circle back the same way again. Again, I will admit I was complicit in my own burnout, but I wasn't the architect of the system that required it. And from a distance, I remembered how much I actually loved the work, just not the way it was structured. So I went back on my own terms, and that's how I became a locum physician. I made my schedule, I worked on my terms, I worked as much or as little as I chose. Let's be honest, in some medical circles, choosing autonomy by being locums over institutional prestige, that's the professional equivalent of joining the circus. But here's what I won't do. I won't pretend that my personal solution applies across board. It's not a strategy for everyone. Most people can't opt out. They just need different tools. And I'm not the only one. Burnout is an epidemic. And the part about survival, reinvention, none of this is my personal plot twist. It's a universal pattern. Let's bring in another voice, someone who's lived through their own version of this, faced the same impossible trade-offs, and found a way forward. Danielle is joining me today to share what that looked like up close and personal. She'll talk about what pushed her to the edge and what helped her to pull back, and what remains complicated. Let's get into it.
Hey there, friends of Graceguts&grit. I'm Danielle Allen, and I help high-achieving women trade exhaustion for a life that actually feels like theirs. I'm unpacking why burnout shows up, how to recognize it sooner, and most importantly, a way forward. About 10 years ago, I was a global technology manager leading an initiative to cut travel costs by rolling out video conferencing rooms for remote training. It looked like I had it all together. I was leading a major project that had a lot of visibility. But behind the scenes, I was barely holding it together. I was a single mom with 2 toddlers, working long hours, constantly switching between meetings, dinner prep, and bedtime routines. Even after I closed my laptop to stop working, my mind didn't. I carried work into every moment, into the car, into the bath, and after reading bedtime stories to my kids. I felt like I gotta get everything done because I don't want to get behind, and I refused to fail. I had just gotten home from getting my kids from daycare and laying down for what I thought was a quick breather. But I must have passed out because the next thing I remember is waking up with my phone in my hand and my manager on the other end. I had answered my phone in my sleep. I was confused and I was a bit embarrassed. I had no idea what I'd said. My mind immediately spiraled. Did I say something inappropriate? Why is he even calling me at 8 p.m. at night? How did I get here? I felt this just deep wave of frustration and disappointment in myself. And this is not the life that I want for myself. That's when it hit me. I had nothing left to give, and I was no longer going to give into being someone I don't want to be. And underneath was this belief I had been carrying for years. I have to prove myself as the only Black woman on the project, and often the only woman in the room. I felt like I had to carry the weight of excellence on my shoulders. But in that moment, my body said what I wasn't ready to say. This is too much. And I remember thinking, I cannot live like this anymore. That was my wake-up call that night. I started doing something I had never done before. I listened to myself. I gave myself permission to pause, even just for a few minutes, to check in with myself. And over time, I began asking new questions. Not what needs to get done, but what do I need right now? This eventually became the foundation of the process I now share with my clients called PACT. It's a simple practice that helped me reclaim space in my own life and actually hear my inner wisdom again. I spoke up at work. I built my own team. I stopped trying to do it all. And I started trusting that being human didn't make me less of a leader. It made me a better one. Burnout does not happen overnight. It builds in silence when we ignore ourselves too long. I thought I had to earn the life I wanted by overfunctioning. But the truth, the life I wanted couldn't begin until I stopped. So if you're listening and you feel like you're drowning in it all, please know this. Burnout is not the price of fulfillment. You are not broken. You are not weak. There is another way, and it starts by coming back to yourself. Fulfillment isn't a reward you earn by outrunning yourself. It's the result of listening to your inner self, not allowing the external pressures to control you or consume you, but instead remember who you are and standing firm in that. When my clients come to me on edge of burnout, I use a practice I created called PACT. Think of it as coming home to yourself, one breath at a time. P stands for pause. Pause, place your hand on your heart to bring your own awareness inward. Take 3 deep breaths. Inhale for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 to just settle in to your own body. A stands for ask. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Tune in to notice what your body is telling you, your emotions, and any physical sensations that you feel in your body. T stands for trust. Trust in the subtleties that you notice. Trust what comes up first without judging it or trying to justify it to yourself. Trust that your body and intuition are guiding you toward what you actually need, even if it doesn't make logical sense in your mind. H stands for honor. Honor yourself. Honor the guidance that comes up for you. Acknowledge it and take action from the guidance given. It can be as small as taking a sip of water, stretching, stepping outside, or simply sitting in silence for a few moments. Done consistently, PACT turns burnout from a cliff into a compass. You don't have to live on empty to create a life that feels meaningful. Burnout is not a personal failure. It's a powerful invitation to realign with what matters most to you. If today's conversation resonated, I've created a free PACT reflection guide, a simple step-by-step check-in guide you can use in 5 minutes a day to reconnect with yourself. Download it at DanielleAllenLifeCoach.com and let it be your first step toward a life that feels like yours again. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Kemi, for inviting me to join the conversation. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing, Danielle, for sharing those moments that didn't make it into the glossy bio. Talking about those late nights, the silent frustrations, and the impossible trade-offs you had to navigate without a guidebook. What you shared today, with your blend of honesty, insight, and hard-earned clarity, matters. Burnout can feel very isolating. But stories like yours break that illusion. They remind us that exhaustion isn't a personal failure, and it's a consequence of systems that reward overextension and penalize boundaries. Thank you for your courage and your candor. If you hold power, if you're titled, tenured, or you have a voice that doesn't get interrupted, here's what effective allies actually do. Because we know equity doesn't happen because you believe in it. And belief without action is performance art. Let's get specific. Don't just echo support in meetings. Spend your capital strategically. Advocate for promotion with concrete justification. When assignments get distributed, ensure high visibility projects don't default to the same demographic. Say their names in rooms they aren't in. Sarah delivered the client presentation that saved the quarter. She should lead the next strategic initiative. Not just Sarah's great. Interrogate the culture fit. Is it values or just shared alumni directory? Audit who's carrying the hidden load. If your organization celebrates inclusion but leans on women and people of color to do most of the unpaid labor of emotional maintenance, morale boosting, that's not inclusion, that's just exploitation. Challenge bias in real time. You need a viral speech. Sometimes it's one sentence in the right moment. I think she was still making a point. Shall we let her finish? If inclusion isn't in the calendar, the budget, or the performance review, it's not a priority. Fund it with leadership development and pay audits. Measure it by how leaders build teams where difference is respected and not erased. And if you have a platform, use it. If not, build one. And yet, I've seen what real leadership looks like. For every system that demanded my overextension, there were individuals who refused to echo it. In residency and even as an employed physician, when the system could have swallowed me, some chose to challenge bias and advocate for me. Program directors who interrupted bias with a raised eyebrow and a swift vocal defense. Mentors who handed me the mic before I thought I was ready. And supervisors who guarded my boundaries like they were their own. I remember once I had applied for a job and never heard back. Not even a rejection email. One of my mentors called the head of HR and said, "It would be your loss not to give her a chance." I almost cried, but I had to be stoic. And eventually I was interviewed and I got the job. But that never would have happened if someone didn't pound that table on my behalf. Because whether I liked it or not, I didn't fit the typical mold they were looking for. They didn't just support me, they redefined leadership. Not permission, not optics, but protection and action. And they were proof that the system can bend when people with influence push. And to those who pushed and still push, my gratitude is eternal. It has a heartbeat. Thank you. But let's be honest, I still burnt out. Not because they failed me, but because the system's demands exceeded even good leadership's ability to shield completely from burnout. So how do you protect yourself and still thrive inside a system that wasn't built for you? The answer depends on how much leverage you actually have. If you're early career, meaning you're replaceable and you know it, your primary job is intelligence gathering. Track patterns, who gets promoted and why. What's the real criteria versus the stated LinkedIn criteria? Document everything, not for legal action, but for pattern recognition. And when feedback is vague, ask follow-up questions privately, not confrontationally. Like, I want to improve. Can you help me understand what more executive presence looks like in practice? I realize you can't refuse all the office housekeeping work, all the note-taking and birthday committees. But you can volunteer strategically for the ones that put you in front of the decision makers. Legal scholar Joan C. Williams calls it office housework. The essential but career-stalling tasks like birthday cakes, note-taking, emotional labor. Helpful is nice, but strategic gets you promoted. And so before you say yes, ask, will this raise my profile or just my blood pressure? Next is for people who have tenure, meaning you've proven yourself but you're not in leadership yet. Now you can start refusing low visibility work directly. I'm swamped with the XYZ project, but I can recommend someone else for the morale boosting committee. Track your wins obsessively. Make them visible, verifiable, undeniable. Push back on vague feedback with data. I delivered 3 projects ahead of schedule this quarter. Can you help me understand what specifically you need me to work on in order to qualify for this leadership role? Studies show women of color get comments on traits and not outcomes. Not you delivered ahead of schedule, not you executed that flawlessly, not your quick thinking and you jumped in and saved the day. Instead, you get this vague feedback, institutional smoke bombs, as they're called. Like, you're not leadership material. You need to work on your executive presence. You're not ready yet. These aren't evaluations. They're smoke bombs, vague enough to be unprovable, but familiar enough to sound legitimate. And remember, you can't fix bias, but you can demand data. If you have formal power, title, budget, use it. Protect people the way you wish you had been protected. Redistribute the invisible labor. Make the hidden work visible and compensated. The strategies that will be applicable to your situation depend on your leverage, and pretending they don't is how we set people up to fail. So before you implement any of this, ask yourself honestly, what's my actual power level? What can I afford to risk? And what battles am I equipped to fight? And if you're wondering, did I use any of these tools myself? Not at first. Some I didn't know about. Others I ignored. I was too busy trying to prove I could take it, and that's how I burnt out. And if you're in a space where speaking up isn't safe, know that keeping your head down for the sake of survival, too, is a form of resistance. And remember, solidarity starts with one person who sees you. Find your one, then become someone else's. Because burnout thrives in isolation. Connection is the antidote. I burnt out doing what I thought was required of me, but I also made choices that accelerated that burnout. Both things are true. The system isn't designed for all of us to thrive easily, especially when you're a woman, a person of color, or an immigrant. And I have to admit, I didn't navigate it as skillfully as I could have. Refusal doesn't mean the system will change. Get that clear. It means you might survive it long enough to change it later. That's not really inspirational, it's just the reality. And if reality feels like settling, maybe the problem really isn't your expectation. It's a system that makes survival feel like a compromise. And in the meantime, guard your peace and your boundaries like it's the last generator in Lagos. So that's it for today's episode of Graceguts&grit. If something resonated with you, made you laugh, made you think, or made you say, whew, I needed that, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, Grace keeps it classy, Guts takes the risk, and Grit gets it done. And you, my friend, were built for this. So, see you next time, same place, same energy. Until then, keep showing up and owning your story.